first thing you want to do is transfer all the markings from the pattern to the fabric. You're going to do this on the right side of one of the gingerbread man pieces. Once you have your markings transferred, you can start placing the felt. Also, little disclaimer, you can do the face in whatever color you want. I have white and black showcased in this video, so sorry for any confusion there. Pin everything in place so that it doesn't move while you're sewing them down. Start with the eyes. You're going to sew all the way around in a circle on the very edge. The closer you get to the edge, the better. Just make sure you're catching all of the felt in your seam. Feel free to pick up the presser foot and adjust accordingly. Just make sure if you're doing that, you're very careful not to give yourself a pointed edge with your stitching. The mouth is a really small piece, so I like to sew down the center first, all the way to the other side. Then while the needle is still in the fabric, I lift up the presser foot, stitch down one side on the very edge, and then turn it to go back the way I came. I like to do this on the top and the bottom for a total of 3 lines of stitching, one through the middle, one on the bottom, and one on the top. Now you're going to attach the buttons. You want to use matching thread for each of these. That way it blends in a little more seamlessly. Now attach the rickrack by sewing straight down the line. Just try to make sure all of your stitching stays on top of the rickrack. Now you're going to take both body pieces and place one on top of the other with right sides together. Match up all of the edges and pin it in place. Take it to the sewing machine and sew all the way around the gingerbread man, leaving a 1 to 2 inch gap on one of the outside legs. You're going to do this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Be very careful, especially if you're using something like a plush fabric. It can slip inside under your presser foot a little bit more, so just make sure you're catching all of the edge in your seam allowance. To help the gingerbread man have a more circular shape, you're going to cut notches or use pinking shears to just trim into that seam allowance a little bit. Now we're going to turn the gingerbread man right side out. I have this super fancy tool that I just got off of Amazon. It's basically just like a surgeon tool, but it really helps grab into those smaller areas that are hard to reach. I highly recommend it. They're not that expensive, but you can also do this with a chopstick or just turning it with your fingers. This one's not too small. So I like to pull all of the appendages inside to the middle first. That way they're not like too hard to pull. And then I pull everything out from the center to the outside. That way your gingerbread man is right side out and ready to stuff. Now either take your tool or a blunt object such as the end of a pencil or something and just make sure all of those edges are turned out. And I highly suggest keeping a lint roller on hand, especially if you're dealing with plush. It leaves a really big mess. Now it's time to stuff the gingerbread man. I like to use my tool, but you can definitely use just your hands and a stuffing tool like a chopstick or something. Start with the appendages. Make sure your stuffing is arms and legs first, otherwise those are going to be a little hard to get to. And you might need to smash and push the filling around to get the gingerbread man to take the proper shape. Now you're going to seal him up using a ladder stitch. So a ladder stitch, we start on one side and then we take it to the other side and we just go back and forth, and that creates a little bit more of an invisible seam. When you get to the end and you've finished your ladder stitch, you're just going to knot it off. I like to use my needle to help me get the knot all the way down. It's a little bit more difficult if you just rely on your fingers, but that gives it kind of a point to slide down the thread on. Now take the needle and push it all the way through the leg to the back side and pull the thread a little bit taut. Then you're going to snip it off. That helps keep the tail of the thread a little tucked in and a little more secure. If you're doing the optional bow, thread the needle with a matching thread through the center of the felt bow piece. You're going to pull it through and pull it tight until it scrunches all together. Wrap the thread around the bow 3 times to hold it in place. Then you're going to thread the needle through one end of the felt tab piece and pull it until it sits on top of the felt bow. Then you're going to wrap the tab around the center of the felt bow piece. If there's any excess tab, you're going to trim that off. Tack the tab to itself with a couple stitches on each side. Then either knot it off and get a new thread, or if you still have extra thread on here, you're just going to go ahead and stitch it straight to the gingerbread man's head. Pick your placement. It could be top or one of the sides. Find where you want it to sit and then just tack it on with a couple stitches and then knot it off and trim the excess thread. Then that's it, your gingerbread man is done and ready to be played with. I hope you've enjoyed this pattern. Thank you so much for following along, and feel free to check out some more patterns in my shop. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.